South Korea is reeling from the country's worst aviation accident in decades, which killed all but 2 of the 181 people aboard on Sunday morning in Muan County. A week-long national mourning period has been declared following Sunday's tragic accident, as the country copes with the aftermath. Investigators are seeking an arrest warrant for President Yoon over his controversial martial law declaration, which is unprecedented for any sitting president. It's December 30th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with a tragic accident here in the country. A Jeju Air flight arriving from Bangkok skidded down the runway at Muan International Airport in the south Sunday morning before crashing into a concrete barrier and bursting into flames. Our correspondent Park Ko-nu is standing by live at the site of the tragic event. Ko-nu, I heard the search operation is continuing.
Yes, Chung-min, First of all, I'm currently standing close at the crash site at Muan International Airport, located in Muan County, southwest part of the country. It's truly devastating here, I must say, with the wreckage of the airplane still on site, although it may be difficult to see clearly for yourselves in the nighttime. And as you just said, search operations are continuing even at this hour, following all-night efforts that began the day before. Though the search for victims ended after 11 hours, the search for personal belongings is ongoing. This comes after the Jeju Air flight that departed from Bangkok on Sunday collided with the wall and became engulfed in flames after crash landing at Muan International Airport due to what some observers are saying was a malfunction that affected the aircraft's landing gear. The incident claimed the lives of 179 people out of the 181 on board, including 6 crew members. The majority of the passengers were Koreans except for 2 Thai nationals, while 11 were students. 157 out of the total deceased are reportedly residents of Gwangju and Jeollanam-do province. DNA samples from bereaved family members were collected at the airport, and the identities of at least 146 people have been verified as of Monday evening. Authorities say it'll take some more time to identify all of the deceased due to the severe condition of the bodies. A temporary morgue has been set up at the airport.
Now, can you tell us more about the mourning atmosphere there?
Of course. So, mourners continue to visit joint memorial altars with at least 2 created in Muan. The closest one here is around 5 kilometers away from the airport, but the bereaved families are requesting one to be put up inside Muan Airport. So take a listen to what a bereaved family member had to say.
The heads of families are dead. Sons and daughters are left by themselves without their parents. How could these people live on? Please provide the exact reason for the incident and ensure proper compensation. But now, the funeral procedures need to be prioritized.
And so those joint memorial altars have also been set up across the country, including in Gwangju City, where many of the victims are known to be those residents. They will remain open throughout the week-long national mourning period. That's all I have for you now. Back to you, Jung-min.
All right, that was our correspondent Park Ko-nu reporting live from the Muan International Airport, the site of Sunday's deadly plane crash. As authorities look into what caused the accident, officials have recovered the plane's black boxes, with flight data recorder found partially damaged, but its cockpit voice recorder intact. Choi Min-jung looks into the causes of the fatal crash.
Muan International Airport issued a bird strike warning just before the deadly Jeju Air passenger plane crash on Sunday. 1 minute after the warning, the pilot, who had more than 6,800 hours of flight experience, issued a mayday call. And just a few minutes later, after a previous attempt to land, the plane landed without its landing gear extended and skidded down the runway before colliding with a wall. An investigation into the cause is underway, with many experts agreeing that a bird strike was the most likely cause. They say such an occurrence may have affected both the engine and hydraulic system, an important component of the landing gear. An expert says that the risk of a bird strike particularly increases during the winter, as migratory birds flock to the area surrounded by lakes and muddy ground in search of food.
While all airports are affected by birds to some extent, it seems that Muan, in particular, is situated in an area with a lot of bird flocks.
Other aviation experts, however, have questioned whether a bird strike is enough to bring such a catastrophic outcome. They argue that pre-existing defects in the aircraft could have been a reason behind the crash, as some note that a second engine could have powered the landing gear even after the failure of the first one. Experts are looking for a clear answer.
If we just go back a few days to the terrible images from Kazakhstan instead, we'll remember that the airplane was bouncing all over. Here it's nice and straight and level. So the pilots are clearly in control of the airplane, which again begs the question, why did they not lower the flaps? Why did they not lower the landing gear?
But the search for answers could see delays, as one of the 2 black boxes retrieved was partially damaged. According to an official, the flight data recorder was damaged in the crash, whereas the cockpit voice recorder remained intact. The black boxes were transported to the Testing and Analysis Center at Gimpo Airport on Monday morning, where experts will work to determine which parts were damaged and how much data can be extracted. The official added decoding the flight data recorder could take at least a month, or even up to around 6 months if it needs to be shipped to the U.S. for decoding. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport announced Monday that it will conduct a joint investigation into the cause of the accident with U.S. investigators, including the National Transportation Safety Board and Boeing, the manufacturer of the aircraft. The ministry will also carry out a special inspection of all Boeing 737-800 aircraft, the model of the plane that crashed Sunday, and conduct a thorough safety inspection on Jeju Air. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Aside from what looks to be a plane malfunction, the country is seeking answers to what caused so many deaths. While some are blaming the runway and the concrete wall at the airport, others warn against drawing conclusions too quickly. Lee Si-hoo reports.
A bird strike and a failure of the plane's landing gear to deploy are among the many contributory factors being considered. While grieved families and the public demand answers on what caused the historically deadliest aviation disaster on South Korean soil, experts remind us that plane crashes typically have multiple causes, some of which may not be immediately clear. What's needed right now? A proper investigation to narrow down the answer.
At the global level, there is an accepted, standard, well-defined and well-proven procedure to investigate accidents. It's very detailed, very effective, but right now we're on page 4. We will know when we reach page 30. So we will have an answer.
There is speculation that the damage may have been minimized if not for a safety structure at the end of the runway being close to the runway. From what we've seen in videos capturing the moment of the crash, the plane failed to lower its landing gear when contacting the runway. It struck a safety system called a localizer and then crashed into a wall before exploding in flames. Officials at Muan International Airport and the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport explained that the localizer and the 2-meter-high concrete wall were built 250 meters from the runway. The Transport Ministry also confirmed the structures are built differently across the country based on airport layouts, and that the one in Muan did not violate the country's airport safety regulations.
The localizer is an aviation safety structure that provides horizontal guidance to pilots during an approach to land. Where these are built and their forms depend on the airport. Some are made from concrete, some are piled. There is no set standard form for the structure.
This, while some point to the Environment Ministry's 2020 assessment, which highlighted the risks of bird strike at the airport, located close to the habitat for migratory birds, and suggested measures for risk reduction. Following the assessment, Muan Airport has been undergoing a 4-year construction project to lengthen its runway, due for completion by 2025. But the Transport Ministry earlier said the length of the runway was likely not the cause of the disaster. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Acting President Choi Sang-mok was at a memorial center in Muan earlier today as the country is in mourning. Lee Soo-jin has this report.
South Korea's acting president, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, on Monday afternoon visited the memorial center for the victims of the deadly Jeju Air plane crash in Muan and paid his respects. On Sunday morning, Flight 2216 was returning from Bangkok and crashed into a wall at Muan International Airport, killing 179 people. The visit to the county of Muan-gun, the site of Sunday's deadly plane crash, comes after a series of government meetings to coordinate comprehensive recovery measures. The acting president, during a Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters meeting held in Seoul on Monday morning, ordered the Transport Ministry to carry out safety checks on aviation systems as a whole.
To prevent future accidents, the Transport Ministry will conduct safety inspections of aircraft operations with the aim of overhauling the aviation safety system to pave the way for a safer South Korea.
He later met with National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik at the National Assembly, where they discussed response measures in a closed-door meeting. A week-long national mourning period until January 4th was declared on Sunday. To mark the mourning period, joint memorial altars will be set up both near the site of the crash and across 17 cities and provinces. Government ministries, local governments, and public institutions will display flags at half-mast, and public officials will wear mourning ribbons. The acting president also said on Sunday that the county of Muan-gun will be designated as a special disaster zone, which allows central government funds to be used for recovery costs that would normally be covered by the local government. The designation provides condolence payments and medical expense coverage. The Supreme Prosecutor's Office also established an accident response headquarters on Sunday to investigate the cause of the crash more efficiently and thoroughly. Jeju Air, meanwhile, maintained that the crash was not caused by aircraft defects, saying that it always conducted maintenance checks before and after departure and that it did not operate an excessive flight schedule. The airline has pledged to do everything possible to support the families of the victims by cooperating with the Transport Ministry investigations and utilizing approximately $1 billion in liability aviation insurance. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Korea's political parties have set aside their differences amid this national tragedy to convey their condolences to grieving family and friends of the victims. Kim Jong-sil has more.
The devastating plane crash at Muan International Airport has prompted a rare moment of political unity. Leaders of both the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party have put aside their differences to focus on recovery efforts and provide support for victims and their families. Main opposition leader Lee Jae-myung, who has been on site for 2 consecutive days, directed all party resources toward recovery efforts on Monday morning.
Amid the heartbreaking cries of grieving families filling Muan Airport, the entire nation is crying together. The priority right now is managing the aftermath. Our party will do everything we can, centering our efforts through the Aviation Disaster Response Committee.
Kwon Song-dong, acting leader of the ruling People Power Party, also visited the airport and pledged full support for recovery efforts. He said a truly devastating and unimaginable tragedy took place, adding the party will do everything it can to help heal the families' hearts and provide the utmost support. Both leaders emphasized the importance of working closely with local governments and agencies with task forces established to ensure swift and thorough recovery efforts. Other opposition parties, including the Reform Party and the Rebuilding Korea Party, have also pledged their full support, further highlighting unity across the political spectrum. Parliamentary schedules, including committee meetings initially planned to address the martial law impeachment crisis, have been postponed to prioritize recovery efforts. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And the international community has been quick to convey its condolences to those here in Korea as they seek to make sense of this latest loss. Lee Seung-jae covers the global response.
World leaders have sent messages of condolence to the families of the victims and the Korean people after the Jeju Air crash at Muan International Airport. Taking to X on Sunday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she was heartbroken to see the images of the plane crash and expressed her deepest condolences to the families of the victims. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also took to X to express his condolences to the victims' families and said he hopes for a speedy recovery for the two survivors. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on the same social media platform called the loss of each life an immeasurable tragedy, adding that Ukraine stands with the Korean people in their time of grief. Both Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba also sent messages. U.S. President Joe Biden issued a statement on Sunday saying that he and First Lady Jill Biden are deeply saddened to hear of the tragic plane crash. Calling South Korea a close ally, Biden said his thoughts and prayers were with those impacted by the tragedy, adding that the U.S. stands ready to provide any necessary assistance. Over in the UK, King Charles also expressed his deep sorrow and said he was profoundly saddened by the crash that killed 179 people. He added that as South Korea mourns the disaster, the families and loved ones of all the victims are in his prayers. The deadliest aviation accident to occur on South Korean soil took the lives of 179 passengers and crew members, with 2 people surviving the tragedy. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Authorities are now seeking an arrest warrant for President Yoon Song-yeol as he shunned a third summons for questioning with regard to his brief imposition of martial law. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers this unprecedented event.
For the first time ever, an arrest warrant is being reviewed for a sitting president. The warrant was requested on Monday by the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials who are investigating the criminal allegations behind President Yoon Song-yeol's declaration of martial law on December 3rd. This was an expected move by the investigation team as President Yoon, for the third time, refused to show up for a questioning session on Sunday, and generally, after 3 tries, an investigation team requests an arrest warrant. According to the joint investigation team made of the CIO and police, 2 charges were stated on the arrest warrant request. One for leading an insurrection and the other for abusing authority to obstruct someone from exercising their rights. The court will now decide whether to issue the arrest warrant or not after considering whether President Yoon's charges, including insurrection, have probable cause and whether he failed to comply with the CIO's summons without a valid reason. Meanwhile, Yoon's legal representative submitted a letter of opinion to the court in response to the CIO's decision. Addressing the public, an attorney for Yoon said the CIO does not have the authority to investigate insurrection charges.
First, the arrest warrant is unjust, as it was requested by an unauthorized institution. Moreover, it does not meet the requirements for an arrest warrant under our Criminal Procedure Act. That's the core issue.
And in terms of the abuse of power charge, he first said a sitting president cannot be prosecuted for an abuse of power according to law. While the general opinion could be divided on that, the legal community generally agrees that an investigation must be minimal for this. He also said that declaring martial law is a constitutional authority granted to the president, and the primary discretion to exercise that authority also lies with the president, claiming once again that an insurrection charge makes no sense. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the economic front, industrial output slumped for the 3rd month in a row in November as tangible proof of the prolonged doldrums. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun explains.
South Korea's industrial production fell for the 3rd consecutive month in November, underscoring persistent weakness in the construction sector. Data released by Statistics Korea on Monday showed that industrial output fell by 0.4% compared to the previous month. The decrease was primarily attributed to a decline in manufacturing production caused by labor disputes in the auto industry, something that also contributed to a shortfall in auto exports last month. This meant that manufacturing output overall dropped by 0.7%, despite a near 4% increase in semiconductor production. Services output fell by 0.2% due to declines in finance and insurance. The construction sector also saw a decline in production for the 7th straight month as building activity slowed, setting a new record for the longest continuous decline since data collection began in 1997. Meanwhile, retail sales, a key gauge of consumer spending, rebounded by 0.4% after seeing drops in September and October. This comes due to a rise in the consumption of semi-durable goods such as clothing, offsetting declines in purchases of durable and non-durable goods. Despite the slight rebound in retail sales, indicators reflecting current economic indicators failed to recover.
All component indicators except for the number of employed persons and amount in imports decreased, causing the constant composite index to fall by 0.5 points month on month, while the leading composite index rose by 0.1 points.
The coincident composite index, which reflects current economic conditions, continued its downward trend for the 9th consecutive month, indicating a challenging economic situation at present. However, the leading composite index, which forecasts future economic conditions, showed a slight increase, suggesting a potential for improvement in the future. In light of this latest data, the Ministry of Economy and Finance remarked that the government plans to mobilize all available resources to strengthen domestic demand and stabilize the economy next year. Moon, Arirang News.
It has been a year of ups and downs, not just here in Korea, but around the globe, particularly in the political arena. Looking back on 2024, earlier I had a chance to talk to correspondents for Voice of America, Mainichi newspaper, and Le Monde. Take a look. Chris, let me first start with you. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump must be busy leading up to his inauguration in a few weeks. What's grabbing the headlines these days there ahead of the leadership change?
And it was this battle over whether the U.S. would pass a funding bill to keep the government running. And there was some drama with that because of Donald Trump's involvement in scuttling an earlier agreement and also Elon Musk's involvement. But lawmakers decided to pass legislation which provides government funding at current levels through March 14th. But many observers think that this is a preview of what it's going to be like with a narrow Republican majority in Congress, in the House.
And Koichi, the change of leadership in Japan has made the headlines in 2024. What would Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba be focusing on at this moment, some 2 months after taking office?
Yes. Well, shortly after his administration began in last October, we had a general elections. And while the ruling coalition maintained its status as the largest bloc, it fell into a minority position. So frankly, there is little room for Ishiba to tackle any significant new policies. His primary focus right now is to pass the budget for the next fiscal year by March. If the budget is passed, his administration will likely continue at least until next upper house election in July next year.
And Philip, for the first time in over 6 decades, the French National Assembly has approved a no-confidence motion against the incumbent government, forcing out Prime Minister Michel Barnier. President Emmanuel Macron is now under pressure to step down. How's the situation there?
As you said, Michel Barnier had to step down. And now there is a new prime minister, which is François Bayrou, and he's struggling to find people to form his own cabinet. But at the same time, Macron is not really threatened. He's basically waiting for the next summer, because at this time he would be able to call for another snap election. And I think that he's waiting for.
Now let's turn to the recent political uncertainty unfolding here in Korea. South Korea, after the National Assembly impeached President Yoon Song-yeol recently over his controversial martial law declaration. The case is now being contested at the Constitutional Court for a final decision. Chris, the U.S. has underscored Washington's alliance with Seoul amid a de facto leadership vacuum here in Korea. How does the U.S. media forecast the relationship between the two allies under a second Trump presidency?
Well, they're expecting a marked change from the Biden administration, which favored a multilateral approach to dealing with North Korea. And analysts say Trump might bypass South Korea entirely, as seen during his first term. And this is according to Daniel Snyder, who is a lecturer in East Asian Studies at Stanford University. And he highlighted the challenges for South Korea if U.S.-North Korea summit diplomacy resumes. And
Koichi, how does the Japanese media forecast bilateral cooperation down the road?
Well, actually, recent improvements in Japan-South Korea relations have been largely due to President Yoon's decision, but still, meanwhile, international dynamics are shifting, and including Russia's invasion of Ukraine and strengthening cooperation between North Korea and Russia, as well as ongoing U.S.-China rivalry. I think given both nations' economic challenges, it seems Japan and South Korea have little choice but to cooperate.
Philip, Le Monde has recently highlighted rallies in Korea supporting the impeachment of President Yoon. What's been its focus? What were the takeaways?
I think that they've been impressed because the rally have been organized just the day after the martial law, and the weekend after it was huge. There were huge rallies, and there were lots of young people, and there were lots of young ladies, more than young boys. It was really amazing. So we have been surprised, but I think it was a good thing to see and a good surprise, and we followed that and covered that with lots of enthusiasm.
All right, a deputy editor at Mainichi newspaper, Koichi Yonemura, Le Monde correspondent Philip Mesmer, and VOA correspondent Chris Katskeho. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Skies were murky today throughout the country. The temperature stayed above the norms, and it was as warm as early March. For the time being, temperatures will exceed the previous years without any severe cold. Some areas have been seeing some occasional rain or snow. Up to 5 centimeters of snow will accumulate in Gangwon-do province by early tomorrow morning. In eastern parts of Gyeonggi-do province, Chungcheongbuk-do province, northeastern parts of Jeollabuk-do province, and northeastern parts of Gyeongsang-buk-do province, about 1 centimeter of snow or about 1 millimeter of light rain is forecast. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at -6 degrees Celsius, Gwangju and Gyeongju 1 degree. Highs will move up to 3 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, Daejeon and Gwangju 6 degrees. It will be possible to enjoy the last sunset of this year and the first sunrise of the new year without any news of snow. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.